Episode 11, Credit Falsely Claimed. While Rose Scott was daydreaming, her father spoke up. "My daughter, how is that solution I found? Rose, I got a little anxious this morning. I said I'd give you to Lucille Brennan in anger. Don't be mad at me, please." Her father's words made Rose blush even more. "What are you talking about? My friends are all listening. You said you'd given me to Lucille. How could you have said that?" she exclaimed. Rose's face turned red as she stood up and walked a few feet to take the call personally. "Dad, you're not the one who found a solution, are you?" Rose asked. "If I could have found a solution, do you think I'd let you spend the night with Lucille?" Rose closed her eyes and took a deep breath, pushing down the curses that were rising in her throat. "Can you not mention this anymore? My friends all knew and were listening just now. You've completely embarrassed your daughter." "Your friends were all there?" "Oh, but it's not my fault. Rose, why didn't you mention that when you made this call?" her father asked. Moving on. I wish I could find a hole to hide in." Rose held her forehead in her hands. "Why did you not mention it? I thought that you were just trying to show off in front of your friends that you had connections and found a solution. But now I see you haven't shown off. You've become an idiot who blew this up into a scandal," her father exclaimed. He paused, then added, "Hey, Rose, could it be that a friend of yours helped you find a solution?" "A friend?" Rose turned around and glanced at the other people around the table. It was quite possible. They had all made calls for her. "It's probably because of a friend. They did us a big favor, so you have to thank them well," her father said. "Fine, that's it. I'm hanging up." Rose's attitude was much more casual now. Could it be that a friend had helped her? Before, her father was scolding her, and now he's making her feel bad. Wait a minute. The person who helped our family could be related to the president of the New York City Merchant Union, William Chase. This matter seems solved through William. This friend is no ordinary person," her dad added at the end. After hanging up the phone, Rose walked back to the dining table with suspicion. After hearing about this, everyone was very interested. Who was it that could get so close to the president of the union? Rose's expression was very calm. She scanned everyone's face and finally locked her gaze onto the right side of Betty Thompson's head. Betty was closest to her, so Rose asked with a smile, "Betty, was it you who helped me?" Betty was stunned, shook her head, and said with a wry smile, "How could I have such a strong connection? Are you kidding me, Rose?" "Really?" Rose's face lowered slightly as she asked again. "It wasn't." Betty felt a bit scared. Rose's gaze shifted to Stacy, who was sitting beside Betty. "Stacy, did you help me?" No, I can't take credit for it. Rose, I've already used up my favors with all the relatives that could have helped," Stacy said as she shook her head. Rose's gaze turned to each person one by one. "Joe, did you help me? Ben, was it you?" Rose asked everyone, but when she got to Alex, she skipped over him. She was not sure about the others, but she thought to herself, "This Alex, this fool that dared to enter a Metro Skybank without a card. Was it him? Is this a joke?" "Then who was it?" Rose lowered her gaze as she seriously pondered this question. A name flashed through her mind like a bolt of lightning. Zane! Apart from the people here, the only person Rose had contacted was Zane. Zane must have been the one that helped. Rose grabbed her phone and called Zane. Was it him? How could his family have a relationship with William Chase? She asked herself. Zane answered while Rose was still feeling suspicious. "Hey Rose, how are you doing?" Zane asked urgently. "Did you help me?" Rose did not slow down to answer his question. She wanted to know Zane's answer first. "I begged my dad after you called me. My dad said that he and President Chase used to be classmates, so he would go to the merchant union to try. But I haven't asked my dad about it yet," Zane said uncertainly. "It's done. It's been solved perfectly," Rose beamed with joy. "Zane, I knew it was you. My dad told me that someone went to look for President Chase to intervene. Zane, thank you so much." "It's fine as long as it's solved. What is there to thank me for? It was nothing." Zane's tone softened. You also know how strong the Heavenly Lion Group is. Even if they were to disappear or go bankrupt, Lucille definitely won't let this spat go like that. I might have been... Look, you've helped me a lot. Rose felt a lingering fear in her heart as she thought about this. The gratitude she felt towards Zane intensified, and tears started to well up in her eyes. Don't think like that. Zane smiled faintly. Come to Rookie's Lodge now. I'll treat you here. I'll thank you in person. Rose invited him enthusiastically. Yep, I'll head over right away, Zane agreed. Thinking of Rose's charming face, a trace of a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. After hanging up the phone, Rose proudly looked around. When the others heard about the president of the merchant union, they were shocked. Someone who could befriend the president was no ordinary person. Rose had such a good friend. How could they not be envious? They looked forward to seeing Zane. Zane was studying at Preston University, and he was not far from campus. When Zane arrived at Rookie's Lodge and saw the other people with the look of envy in their eyes, his heart became a bit calmer and his expression a bit haughty. Zane was 6 feet tall and a bit chubby with a slightly oily complexion to his white face. Hi, Zane. Rose walked up to Zane with a smile on her face and grabbed his hand. She stared into his eyes like a little girl. Thank you. I'm touched that you helped me when I needed you the most. Zane glanced at Rose's hand. With a boost of courage, he gently grabbed her hand and looked at her charming face. His eyes were unmoved as he gently said, Don't say such things, it's not a big deal. Rose smiled sweetly and pulled him toward the table. The others at the table all stood up when they saw Zane coming over and looking at him fawningly. Zane had a connection with the head of the New York City Merchant Union, so he had a much higher position than his classmates. So many people, Zane whispered to himself as he walked toward the dining table. He felt very satisfied as he saw everyone standing up to welcome him. He lowered his hand and said, Everyone, why are you all standing there? After Zane's words, they all sat down. You sit with me. Rose pulled Zane toward her seat, but he was so strong. Susan Ogden called out to the others to shift their seats, but Rose and Zane still felt crowded. Alex, she said as she motioned him to move. Just when everyone was moving the chairs, Rose looked at Alex with a dark expression. When Alex looked back at her, Rose felt embarrassed. Then she bluntly said, Why don't you leave first? I didn't ask you to come out anyway, and now you're almost done eating. The university isn't too far away, so you should go back to your dorm. Episode 12, Beauty and the Blood. At that moment, everyone felt a chill and looked at Rose and then Alex. Alex's face stiffened, and his heart felt like it was being pierced by a needle. A faint feeling of regret rose inside of him. Alex shifted his gaze away from Rose's face. With a smile of understanding appearing on his face, he nodded, put down his chopsticks, stood up, and walked outside. Walking out of the elegant restaurant, Alex looked up at the night sky with wrinkled eyes, and his heart filled with bitterness. Joe and the others tried to chase after Alex. Alex walked along the street toward the university. Both sides of the street were lined with a variety of carts and red sheds with dim yellow light bulbs hanging from them. Passing through the couples, Alex felt a little lonely. He lowered his head slightly and quickly crossed the street. He walked onto the campus and headed towards the dormitory. Mark Stevens, Alex's family butler, called as Alex tried to lay down on his bed. Alex, the person in charge of the East Coast Division, Ken Stokes, knows that you've been in poverty training in New York for many years. He hopes to meet with you. Alex's family business is centered in the United States, with businesses and influence all over the world, including South America, Western Europe, Africa, and East Asia. That's okay, Alex said with his easygoing personality. Since there wasn't anything going on at the moment, Alex added, It would be good to see the people working for my family. All right, I'll notify him right away and ask him to meet you at Preston University then, Mark suggested. No need, Mark. I'll go see Mr. Stokes. It's not convenient to meet at the university, Alex replied, rejecting Mark's suggestion. It would put on too much of a show if Ken, the head of the family's main district, came to the university to meet him. Alex didn't want to look too flamboyant, and he still wanted to stay in university for a few more days to live a peaceful life. Alex, you are a descendant of the family. It is not in line with the rules for you to go see him. Ken is just a person in charge of a large area. How could I bother you? Mark said in fear. It's fine. Mark, you're overthinking it. I just want to take a walk around the city. Don't worry about it. Alex didn't care much for these formalities. Alex, you treat your subordinates well. I'll speak with Ken now, Mark said with a grateful voice. Okay, Alex said and hung up the phone. Mark called back right away. Alex, Ken will be having lunch at the Golden Mansion Hotel tomorrow. Would it be all right for you to join him there? Tomorrow works for me, Alex replied. After hanging up with Mark, Alex laid down on the bed and played with his phone for a while before falling asleep. He woke up to the sound of voices, squinted, and saw that his doormates had returned. Zane is such a pain. He still has to go sing after dinner. He's got such a bad voice, Ben cursed. When we came back, it was already raining. He couldn't have taken Rose out for a ride on his motorcycle, right? Carl Cooper frowned as his glasses reflected the lights. All right, go wash up and sleep. Stop being so noisy. Joe saw that Alex was sleeping and whispered to Ben and Carl as they went to wash their faces. The next day, when Alex walked out of the dorm on his way to class, the ground outside was already wet and the air was fresh. After his second class, Alex felt he needed a rest and went to his dorm. He was getting ready to put his head down on the desk when Joe hastily ran in. Something happened to Rose, Joe exclaimed worriedly as he ran over to Alex. What about her? Ben asked with his mouth wide open. Rose was too much, wasn't she? One incident after another, Ben thought to himself. Did she fall yesterday? Carl asked without shock. How did you know? Joe asked, feeling slightly shocked. It rained very heavily last night. If they were on a motorcycle, it would be very easy for something to go wrong, said Carl as he pushed up his glasses. Yeah, I was training on the sports field just now. Susan called me. She said that Zane took Rose out for a motorcycle ride when the ground was too wet. They ended up in the hospital last night. Their dorm went there early in the morning. She told me to go visit too, Joe told him in one breath. Come on, let's go see her now. After all, Rose had invited us to dinner last night. Joe patted both Ben and Carl on their shoulders. Let's go see her, said Ben as he and Carl stood up. Alex, are you coming? Joe looked over at Alex, who was just sitting there in his seat. You go ahead, I still have some things to take care of, Alex said, shaking his head. Yep, good, said Joe. Having learned from yesterday's lesson, Joe didn't force Alex to go. He followed Ben and Carl to the dorm room door, waved goodbye to Alex, and with that, the three of them disappeared. Alex got up and walked out of the university. He called a taxi and went straight to the Golden Mansion Hotel. It was considered one of the most luxurious hotels in New York. Although New York was filled with tall buildings, this square glass building was quite eye-catching. The hotel's plaza that surrounded it was filled with all sorts of luxury cars. Alex walked towards the door of the hotel. When he walked in, he found that the door, which seemed very low from a distance, was as tall as 2 floors. The hotel interior dazzled in gold and jade. The grand crystal chandelier, golden lights, beige floor tiles, bright red carpets, and exquisitely dressed service staff were all showcasing the extravagance and richness of the hotel. Alex stepped onto the 2-meter-wide red carpet and walked towards the elevator. As the elevator doors were slowly closing, Alex saw a woman with flawless makeup running toward the elevator. He quickly pressed the button to open the doors. She had long and beautiful hair, snow-white skin, and long eyelashes. She wore a pink chiffon sweater and a pair of tight jeans with a diamond necklace hanging from her snow-white neck. She looked very full of energy. Alex stepped to the side and let the beautiful woman walk in. He could smell the scent of her expensive perfume. Her walk drew attention to her curvy figure. Alex had only seen this kind of beauty on his computer before. He was stunned to see a real-life woman like this in front of him. The elevator door closed, leaving only Alex and this long-haired beauty inside. With such a stunning beauty next to him, Alex's heart was moved. Unknowingly, his gaze had secretly drifted toward her. "What are you looking at?" she exclaimed as she turned her head and stared at Alex. Nothing." Alex was shocked. When her flawless face appeared in front of him, his heart jumped as if it were about to fly out of his chest. It startled him so much that he quickly stood up proper. Her face turned red when she saw Alex blushing from her remark. She turned back again to face the mirror-like wall inside the elevator. Fiddling with her necklace and bending her face slightly closer toward the wall, she puckered her lips to check her lipstick. Alex had already warned himself not to look at this woman anymore, but now that she had moved, her butt was even perkier than it was before. How could he bear it? He secretly reached out and touched her butt while sneaking a few glances. "Are you still looking?" She turned around and asked aggressively, stopping only a few centimeters away from him. She trembled slightly, and Alex could feel a trace of her warmth. Alex's heartbeat quickened, and he felt a sudden hot sensation in his nose. Blood began to flow out. He quickly raised his head. "You have no future. Oh, you're bleeding from your nose?" Seeing this, she was no longer angry. She crossed her arms and looked at Alex with a smile. Alex felt his nose itch. "Achoo!" Alex couldn't help but sneeze. "Yuck! Why are you so lacking in manners?" she shouted. Alex opened his eyes and saw that he had just sneezed, spurting blood from his nose onto her chiffon sweater. Sorry. Alex quickly apologized and took out a tissue to wipe the blood off her sweater. Alex's hand had already touched her chest. He'd even wiped it twice with a tissue, but in less than a second, his attention shifted. So big, so soft, he thought dreamily. "What are you doing?" she shouted while angrily glaring at Alex. Alex still couldn't react. "Pervert!" She cursed angrily as she raised her hand and slapped Alex across the face. At that moment, the elevator reached the top floor. As soon as the elevator door opened, the long-haired beauty ran out toward the bathroom. Alex touched his hot and painful face, looking at her back. He was slightly dazed. The 5 slaps across the face were worth it. Alex couldn't help but recall how he felt when he put his hand on her chest. Alex followed her to the bathroom and waited for her at the door. He wanted to apologize. "I'm sorry, I didn't do that on purpose." Alex hurried forward to apologize as he saw her come out. "Scram! If it wasn't for the important guests I have today, I would have you sent to the police station." She didn't accept Alex's apology at all. She pushed him away and quickly walked forward in her heels. Alex staggered as he looked at her back. He scratched his head and went to take care of his nose in the bathroom. Then he slowly walked to room 888, which had been arranged for his meeting with Ken. Episode 13, Rich Boy Packs Lunch. Room 888 was already filled with people. Ken Stokes, a well-proportioned and middle-aged man, stood at the door of the room and chatted with the general manager of the Golden Mansion Hotel. "Are you all ready?" The general manager bent his body slightly forward and respectfully said, "Everything has been prepared according to your directions. The only ingredients for the meals you brought this time were an eye-opener for our hotel. You are the only one in New York who can find so many precious ingredients." Ken didn't pay any attention to the general manager's flattery and simply said, "My guest is about to arrive, so go busy yourself." As soon as the general manager left, the long-haired beauty ran in. When she saw Ken, she walked up to him as if she had made a mistake. "Mr. Stokes, I'm late. Sorry." "Sit down." Ken looked at her speechlessly and sighed. Luckily, Alex Ambrose still hasn't arrived. Otherwise, I would have lost face because of you. She smiled apologetically as she sat down in silence. Ken stood at the door of the private room and waited anxiously. A moment later, Alex casually appeared in the corridor. Ken was startled and rushed over to greet him. "Mr. Ambrose, you're here. Come in, come in." After being respectfully invited by Ken, Alex walked into room 888. Everyone in the room stood up. Most of them wore suits and were in their 40s or 50s. They were all upper-class people from New York and the surrounding states. These are all people who work in the East Coast Division. Ken introduced them to Alex and then said to the others, "This is Mr. Alex Ambrose." "Greetings, Mr. Ambrose," they said in unison. "It's him," thought the long-haired beauty. When she saw Alex, her eyes widened in disbelief, her entire body filled with unease and apprehension. Had I just shouted at the family's heir in the elevator? Alex also noticed her, and he hadn't expected that this sexy, long-haired beauty would be in the room. Alex's gaze lingered on her face for a second, before he returned to normal and calmly said, "Everyone sit down." "Mr. Ambrose, please take a seat." Ken gestured to a seat beside the beautiful long-haired woman. "Oh," Grace Carter realized and walked to her seat before giving the long-haired beauty an indifferent glance. She glanced at Ken again. Noticing the questioning look in Alex's eyes, Ken explained who the long-haired beauty was to him. "She is the director of East Coast Division's Information Department, Lucy Smith." Lucy looked at Alex with a very bitter, powerless, and dejected smile. It was no wonder that she would laugh out loud no matter how optimistic she was. "Mr. Ambrose, please have a taste. I had this dish specially prepared for you," Ken suggested as he placed a dish before Alex. "Okay." Alex picked up a mouthful of the dish and put it in his mouth. It was very tasty. "It's been more than 7 years since I've eaten in such an upscale hotel. This is the first time I've eaten something so delicious in a long time," Alex thought silently in his heart. What Alex did not know was that when the other guests tasted the dishes, their appetites were also stirred, and their hearts were also filled with yearning. The banquet soon ended. Alex had eaten until his belly was full. "Mr. Ambrose, have you finished? I'll take you to the Bay Club to rest after you're done eating," Ken asked respectfully by his side. It was rare for the young heir to show such appreciation, so he had to serve Alex well. "The clubhouse?" thought Alex. "No need," Alex said. Lucy had been relaxing along the side of the room after the banquet. After seeing Alex's shy expression, she couldn't help but cover her mouth and quietly chuckle. Alex was so cute, she admired it to herself. Ken nodded, and the others all sat down and looked at Alex without saying anything. Alex looked at the dishes on the table and seemed to be deep in thought. He took out his phone and looked at the time. It was 1:30 in the afternoon. "Mr. Ambrose, is there a problem?" Ken asked worriedly. It felt it had been difficult for him to entertain Alex, and he felt he may have failed. If true, and this was spread to the elders, would they blame him? The others also nervously looked at Alex. Inviting their young heir to a meal was no small matter, and they couldn't handle the stress. How could a bunch of elites from the East Coast Division have the ability to entertain this young man? "No," Alex shook his head slowly. "Then you are..." Ken was confused. Alex smacked his lips, looked at Ken, and said, "These dishes were pretty delicious, so I want to bring some back for my friends to have a taste." Hearing Alex's words, Ken and the others looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, they were unable to react. So, Mr. Ambrose was thinking of picking up some food for his roommates. Isn't this unexpected? Thought Ken. A rich, second-generation heir was so considerate of his friends? While the others were surprised, they were also very impressed with Alex. With such a rich family, the absence of putting on airs, Alex would become someone great in the future. Alex didn't understand their point of view. The others looked at him in a daze. He simply pointed at the delicious dishes on the table and said, "Mr. Stokes, help me pack this, and this." Yes, I'll do it now." Ken nodded as he came back to his senses. As he said that, he had walked to the side of the room and began dialing his phone for the general manager to arrange it. Naturally, the general manager didn't dare to hesitate and ordered the kitchen to make the dishes again with the ingredients that Ken had brought. When all the dishes were prepared again, the general manager added a bottle of good wine along with the food. Half an hour later, the general manager and 2 attendants arrived at room 888. Each of the attendants carried a blue and white box in their hands. The general manager said, "Mr. Stokes, it's ready." "Mr. Ambrose, are you satisfied?" Ken opened one of the boxes and saw that all kinds of dishes were packed into smaller boxes inside. "There's too much. I only have 3 roommates. I only want 1 box, so don't waste this. If you can sell it, just sell it. If you can't sell it to your people, just eat it." Alex forced a smile and said, "I only asked for 3 dishes to be cooked." Yet Ken had ordered all the dishes on the table again. "Let me help you carry it." Ken picked up the box himself and followed behind Alex. The group of people from the room also followed him out of the hotel. "All right, you can all go back now. I'll just take a taxi," Alex said as he looked at the crowd. "Mr. Ambrose, I'll take you there. My car is over there." Lucy invited her driver to come out. Sure," Alex agreed. With Lucy escorting Alex off, Ken and the rest felt relieved. After bidding Alex farewell, they all left. As they walked to the car, Lucy started to apologize to Alex. "Mr. Ambrose, thank you so much for letting me take you back. It was me in the elevator." She grabbed his hand and said, "Please slap me a few times as well." No need, Director Smith. What are you doing?" Alex retracted his hand and said, "I shouldn't have snuck a peek at you in the elevator. It's nothing." "It's my good luck that you saw me. I hope you're not angry with me. I'm very grateful. Thank you, sir." Lucy bowed to Alex as she kept talking. "All right, let's just get me back to campus." Alex smiled faintly. "Yes," Lucy responded. As they walked, Alex took out his cell phone and called his dorm mate, Joe. "Where are you?" "I'm still at the hospital in Rose's room," Joe replied. They're still in Rose's room, Alex thought. I should go there now with all this freshly cooked food. Alex frowned slightly and said, "What's Rose's room number? I'll head over there now." They arrived at Lucy's Mercedes-Benz G500 as he finished talking with Joe. "Mr. Ambrose, please get in," Lucy said sweetly to Alex. Alex first put the box of food in the back seat, then climbed in. Lucy got in on the other side. "To Preston University, Mr. Ambrose?" Lucy's driver asked. The two of them were alone in the back. Looking at Lucy's smiling face, Alex felt a faint nervousness rising from the bottom of his heart. "Let's go to the general hospital. My friend is there," Alex said. "Okay," Lucy's driver said, smiling, and started the car. The car was filled with the fragrance of Lucy's perfume. Alex wanted to glance over at Lucy again, but when he saw Lucy's gaze, he quickly turned away. His face flushed and his heart felt flustered. He felt ashamed. "Sir, you can have a good look. I won't say anything." Lucy puffed out her chest as her soft voice floated over. "Huh?" Alex was stunned. Lucy glanced at Alex and said, "Didn't I say this before? Being seen by you is a blessing." Alex smiled with embarrassment. Since Lucy had said so, there was no need for him to sneak around anymore. He turned in the seat and gazed directly at her. It had to be said that Lucy's figure was incredibly voluptuous. Everything on her body was captivating, including her earlobes, her ample peaks, and her snow-white arms. Alex's mouth went dry, and his face turned red and hot from looking at her. They arrived at the hospital. When she saw that Alex's gaze was still fixated on her, Lucy couldn't help but shyly smile. "Mr. Ambrose, we're here," she said softly. "Oh, we're here?" stammered Alex. Only then did Alex recover his composure. "Thank you. I'll be leaving now." He grabbed the food and exited the car. Episode 14. Alex's Poor Box of Food. As Alex touched the box of food, it still felt warm, so his dormmates could still eat a warm meal. He carried the box into the hospital. Creak! The door squeaked as Alex pushed it open into the hospital room. Rose Scott was staying in a single room. Her injuries weren't serious, so she only had some gauze on her injured leg. Rose's friends were circled around her hospital bed. Other than Joe and a few others, the rest of them were dressed quite stylishly. Beside the bed lay the gifts that they had brought with them. There were beautifully packaged fruit baskets, several red boxes of chocolate, and a few vases filled with brightly colored flowers. The group was talking and laughing, but everyone's gaze turned towards Alex as he came in with the box of food. Alex was stunned by the crowd. He hadn't expected there to be so many people in Rose's room. Alex was originally here to deliver food for Joe, but after all, Rose was injured. Now that so many people were looking at him, he smiled and asked Rose, "Rose, are you okay?" Rose didn't respond. She just looked coldly at him, as if she wasn't happy to see him. "What's that in your hand?" Rose's doormate, Stacy Whitehouse, asked as she pointed at the box Alex was holding. "Oh, I brought some food over from my friends," Alex said plainly as he glanced down at the box. "You can't be bringing food to see Rose, right?" Stacy looked at Alex in surprise and said, "Coming to the hospital to visit patients with food?" "Even if it isn't for Rose, they would still," Alex started to explain. Just as Alex was about to explain that this meal was for his roommates, Joe walked over quickly, patted Alex on the shoulder, and said with a smile to the others, "Alex is the real deal. We haven't eaten yet. This'll feed everyone's hunger." Alex had come to Rose's hospital room, so if he hadn't brought anything with him, her snobbish friends likely would have ridiculed him. Although this meal was meant for his roommates, now it looks like it was for Rose. It was better to bring food than nothing, right? Alex thought. "Ha ha, this is the first time I've heard of someone bringing food to see a patient," said one person. "I've heard of it before, but all I've seen were patients' mothers bringing food. You're still a university student, aren't you?" said another person. A few of Rose's friends started to discuss among themselves. "Hey, no one saw you when you came in with this thing just now, right?" Rose asked snappily. It was embarrassing for a classmate to bring her food. "I saw it," said someone. Alex felt a bit uncomfortable. "Don't say that the food was not for her. Even if it was for her, it would still represent my generosity and shouldn't be looked down upon, right?" Alex thought to himself. "You saw it? How shameful!" Rose snorted and turned her head away. "Why don't we take a look at what exactly he's giving us?" Stacy said plainly. After saying that, she walked over to Alex and opened the box he was holding. Rose's friends started to talk to each other. "There's no need to look. What good stuff can you possibly bring? I heard this person's name at university. His family's extremely poor, and he doesn't normally go to restaurants," one said. Another responded, "I think I recognize him. He used to be a delivery boy outside of our university, and I've even ordered takeout from him. He delivers takeaway for the small food stalls outside the university." "Ah, for those small stalls outside the university, a serving of fried rice and noodles would only cost $1 or $2. Is that box full of fried rice and noodles?" "Definitely. By the looks of him, even if it's not egg fried rice, it wouldn't be worth more than $2. Rose needs good food right now. Why bring this? When the nurses come in later, they'll see everyone in the room eating lunch from these boxes. It's only $1 or $2 worth of fried noodles. If this gets out, we'll be the laughingstock of the hospital." Rose's friends talked back and forth, ignoring Alex, who was still standing there. A few of them had eaten together at the Rookies' Lodge the evening prior, so they all knew Rose's attitude toward Alex. Alex was speechless. There was no need for him to stay any longer. He ignored the others and told his roommates to eat their food before it got too cold. He then turned around and left. Rose frowned as she looked at Joe, who was carrying the box of food. "Slow down. Be careful not to eat too much." Joe felt a little uncomfortable, but he didn't say anything in front of everyone, so he put the box on the floor. At that moment, the door to the room opened and someone walked in. "Rose, it's all my fault. How are you? Is the injury severe?" Zane Harrison walked in. His head and hands were wrapped in gauze, so his injuries weren't too serious. "It's nothing serious. Just a bit of skin and a bit of a fracture. The doctor said I should be discharged after 2 days of observation. What about you?" Rose said as the coldness on her face vanished and she revealed a sweet smile. "Are you all right? You were in a coma yesterday. How are you feeling?" "It's all my fault. Sitting behind you, influenced you," Zane said with concern. Following that, Rose started to show Zane some warmth. Seeing this, Joe and the others didn't feel good. When Alex had walked in, Rose spoke coldly to him. The other people's words were so unpleasant to hear, and they didn't even try to ease the mood. In contrast, Zane caused Rose's injury, but Rose treated Zane so well. Even Rose took the blame for the injury upon herself. However, no matter what, Zane had saved Rose's family's company this time, so it was understandable that she would treat Zane this way. Joe and the others could only let out a sigh. As she spoke, another woman rushed into the room. "Rose, what's wrong? How are your injuries?" "Oh my, look at this arm covered with gauze. What did the doctor say?" the woman exclaimed. As the woman spoke, she rushed to Rose's bedside and looked at her in worry. She was dressed in a light blue striped business suit. She had short, neat hair, fair skin, and long, thin eyebrows. "Auntie," Rose sighed. Rose's big eyes were shining as she stared at the woman, her small hands already holding onto the woman's hand. The woman that had rushed in was Rose's aunt, Sue Bradley. Although Sue was Rose's aunt, she was only 4 years older than her. They were more like sisters, so after the incident, Rose had naturally called Sue. "The doctor said it's not a big problem. Auntie, don't worry. I'm blaming myself. I should have called you to tell you not to come," Rose said matter-of-factly, looking Sue in the eye. Hearing Rose's words, Sue heaved a sigh of relief. Sue noticed that Zane's head was also wrapped in gauze, so she turned to look at him and frowned. "So, you're the one who threw Rose off the motorcycle, right? You said it rained last night? Why were you riding around in the rain? Do you think you're so good on that bike? You got lucky nothing serious happened this time. If something had happened, you would be..."